In this video, we will show you how to replace your starter on this Nissan Maxima with a 3.5-liter engine. This will be located underneath your battery. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we have to do is disconnect our negative battery terminal. To disconnect your negative battery terminal, we'll be using a 10mm. Let's go ahead and loosen this mounting nut just enough that we can remove the terminal end from the battery. A quick inspection of that, we'll set it aside. Continuing on, we're going to repeat the process for the positive terminal. Commonly, this will have a plastic cover on it. Go ahead and pull that out of place. Using your 10mm, we're just going to loosen that nut just as before. After doing that, we're going to start removing our battery hold down. Along either side, you're going to find that it has a hooked rod that makes its way all the way down towards the bottom of the battery tray. Along the top, you're going to have a 10mm nut for each of these. Let's go ahead and start removing those upper mounting nuts so we can remove the upper portion of this. I'm just going to take hold of this rod, try to pull it out of its mounting point along the bottom there. It's very difficult to see down in there, but that's that hooked area I spoke of. Now sometimes you have to loosen this side as well, other times you can just maneuver it around. So this one I'm just going to loosen a little bit. Just a quick inspection of that, and we'll set it aside. We can remove our battery. Just carefully take hold of this, lift it up and out of position. Now we're going to be removing the air inlet tube. For this, you're going to find that you have 3 10mm headed mounting bolts holding it in place. Let's start getting these out of here. Let's get the center one. Let's go ahead and take hold of that and we'll start pulling it out of place. Now, if we were looking along where our vehicle's computer is going to be located, on the inboard side, where all these wiring harnesses are, you're going to find that there's a 10mm headed mounting bolt holding this in place. Let's start removing that bolt. Now that we have the wiring harness dislodged over there, let's make our way to where the electrical connectors meet onto the vehicle's computer. Now there's 4 of these connectors over here that we're going to have to pay attention to. Each one of them is pretty much the same. You just want to try to find the locking tab. Go ahead and press that in. And then you should be able to pull up on the lever, dislodging this. Slide that off of there. Once it's disconnected, a quick inspection for corrosion, of course. This one looks fine. Let's repeat the process. Got one more tucked in here. Now where the battery was sitting, there's a small plastic tray. We can remove that. With the panel out of the way, let's move along this rearward side here. We can see where we have a wiring harness, which is attached down on this metal bracket. We're going to dislodge that. For this, I'm just using a flat blade screwdriver. I'm going to come along the rearward side. There's a small locking tab. Just want to try to get into this area. It's very difficult to see. I'll show you once I get it popped apart. Just make my straight in, twist, lift it up. Give this a little twist. Doesn't turn very far. But essentially that right there is our locking tab I was pressing on. And then it just slides up and off of that metal rod down there. Now we're going to move along to removing 4 13mm headed mounting bolts. There's one right here, one right here. Making my way towards where the engine is, there's one here and here, holding this bracket in place, which is also holding our computer. Now we're going to take hold of this bracket. We should be able to give it a small wiggle. We're going to separate it along this area and lift it up and out of place. It just makes its way underneath there. There it is. Set that aside. Now we're moving along to removing this portion of the battery tray. Underneath this, there will be another bracket to remove. For this battery tray, you're going to find that it has 3 13mm headed mounting bolts to remove. Let's get those out of place. With the mounting bolts out of there, we're going to pay attention along the outboard side here where our negative battery terminal makes its way down along this tray. For this, you're going to find that it has a small plastic locking tab. Just go ahead and use an angled pick or even a small screwdriver. pull out on that locking tab, you should be able to lift up on this plastic piece and pull it out and away from the metal bracket. Use some penetrant if necessary. Let's get this bracket out of here. We'll make sure we empty out all that corrosion into the trash can. Now, looking straight down along this side of the bracket that we're going to be removing, you're going to find that we still have a wiring harness attached to this area. It has a small locking tab. Just going to use an angled pick. We'll gently pry out on that locking tab a little bit. We should be able to slide this out of place. Before we can start removing this bracket from the body of the vehicle, if you were looking along the forward side of it, inside of this area you can see that there's two threaded portions of bolts, and the bolt heads are actually on the outboard side holding a bracket to this. Let's start removing each of those using a 10mm. There's that one. Just going to grab that bracket. Now, typically this bracket will still be attached to a wiring harness right along this area. So once you have it dismounted, just go ahead and set this and the wiring harness aside. Ours looks like it was already dislodged. At this point, we can start removing this bracket from the body of the vehicle. Now, if you were looking along either side of the bracket, we're along the rearward side here, we have a 13mm headed bolt there, and there's one over on the opposite side. We're going to start with the harder one to get to, right along the rearward area here. For this, I'm using a 13mm. I have an extension, of course, my 3/8 ratchet. Just a quick inspection of that mounting bolt. You can start it back in there a couple threads. We'll repeat the process for the next one here. Just go ahead and take that one right out. Quick inspection. Let's get this next one out of here using my swivel extension. Now that exposes our starter deep down in this area. There's still a little bit more digging to do. We're going to have to remove our transmission dipstick tube, and you can see there's a wiring harness that leads up and along it. We'll start dislodging that. Now, as far as the wiring harness mounting points, you actually want to make your way along the back side of this area. There's two locking clips for each one of these mounting points. Just go ahead and squeeze them together and pull this out of place. I'm going to use some pliers for this. Just try to squeeze those ears. Now I'm using a trim tool along the outboard side here. You can use pretty much anything as a small prying device once you do squeeze on those ears. Now that we have that dislodged, let's have a look at those two ears. This is what I did. Made my way along the back side, squeezed on those two ears, and pulled it out of place. Very simple. Let's repeat the process down to the next point here. Now we're going to dislodge the electrical connector that leads to our starter. For this, it just has a small locking tab up along the top. I'm going to use a small pocket screwdriver, gently pry up against this area. We're being extremely careful not to cause any damage to that electrical connector because we will be reusing it. Quick inspection for corrosion, of course, just like every other time. We'll set that wiring harness aside. Now that we have that wiring harness out of the way, we can focus on our next wiring harness. This one actually leads down to this area. It's covered by a protective boot. We're just going to pull that protective boot right up and out of position. You're going to find that there's a 12mm headed mounting knot holding this wiring harness in place to the starter. Let's go ahead and remove that and the wiring harness from that starter. Should be able to slide that off of the starter now. Just a quick inspection of that, confirming it's not damaged in any way. This looks fine. When we do install, we will make sure this is clean. Next, we're going to have to remove our transmission dipstick tube from this area. To be able to remove this, the first thing we need to do is make sure that no miscellaneous debris falls inside of our transmission. All the way down at the bottom of that transmission dipstick tube, we're going to find that there's a 10mm headed mounting bolt, and commonly, a whole bunch of miscellaneous debris. For me personally, I'm going to carefully use some compressed air. Just keep in mind, any of this debris could potentially be battery corrosion, and you don't want to get it in your face or lungs. Now, I've used some penetrant down in this area. We'll remove our 10mm headed mounting bolt, but we will not be able to lift up on this transmission dipstick tube yet. We have to make our way straight up for the next mounting hardware. Now we're making our way up that transmission dipstick tube to our next mounting bolt, located just behind this bracket. Start getting this off of here. Now we should be able to take hold of that transmission dipstick tube. Typically, I like to give it a little wiggle side to side, just essentially breaking it free, and we'll remove it from the transmission. Now at this point, you just want to go ahead and give that transmission dipstick tube a quick inspection, confirming it's not rotted and weak. A little bit of rust is okay, but we don't want to have anything that moisture can make its way inside. This looks fine. Let's set it aside. Now clearly, we do not want to leave this transmission port open for anything to fall inside. Protect the area with something. You can use a rag if necessary, or if you have a small rubber plug, you can also use that. Now it's time to start removing the starter. The starter itself is held in place to the engine and transmission with two 14mm headed mounting bolts. There's one right out in the open up here. The second one's going to be tucked in just underneath this area here. It's a little bit more difficult to gain access to, so that's the one I'm going to start with. We'll be using a 14mm. My 14mm on a long extension. Get that upper piece of mounting hardware out of place, still using our 14mm, of course. Now we should be able to take hold of that starter. We're going to give it a wiggle and pull it out and away from the engine and transmission. You can see it starting to separate. There it is, friend. Before installation of our brand new starter, the next thing that you need to do is go ahead and clean and inspect the mounting area where the brand new starter is going to sit. Looking at this, we can see that there is some corrosion. Let's go ahead and clean that up. For me, I'm using a wire brush. Start brushing that out and away from the port. We don't need to force anything inside of this area. Now after cleaning along the inside of the port there, we're also going to pay special attention to this flat surface. This is the area that the starter will press up against. We want to make sure that that's a smooth surface, and also the mounting bolt ports are clean and free of any debris. I'm just going to use a clean rag, no detergents on this, and just wipe out the inside. Okay friend, now it's time to install our brand new starter. When installing this, let's make sure we have it in the proper orientation. We want to make sure we can have access to that wiring harness along the front. Now we're just going to rest this in position. Continue on with your two mounting bolts. We'll start them in. Once they're both started in, snug them up and torque those to 41 foot-pounds. Let's get that next one in there, down on the bottom. A little bit harder to gain access to, not very hard. They're both snug. Now we can torque those to that 41 foot-pounds. Now the starter's fully mounted, we're continuing on with our wiring harness. As you remembered, when we were removing our large power wire, I said that we were going to have to clean this down. For this, I'm just going to use some fine sandpaper along this side and on the opposite side, confirming that there's no corrosion or debris. Feels good. Let's get this in position. We'll continue on with our locking washer and our brand new mounting nut. Let's go ahead and get that right in position over the large stud on our starter. Slide that washer right on there. Start on the mounting nut by hand. Now we're going to lightly bottom this out. The torque for this is 76 inch-pounds. Okay, right there's bottomed out. Let's torque that to that 76 inch-pounds. Protect the area. Now before we continue on to our next connector, I always like to reinstall my transmission dipstick. To do that, we're going to make our way all the way down to the transmission where we installed that protective plug or whatever you have in front of that port. Go ahead and remove that. Inspect the area for any miscellaneous debris before you continue on with the installation. Now there was a small rubber O-ring. I removed that, wiped it down, a quick inspection to make sure it's still soft and pliable. That feels good. Now just a quick wipe down at that mounting point. We're trying to make sure nothing falls inside of our transmission. That seems good. It's time to install our dipstick tube. We're going to take that O-ring and we'll slide it all the way up to this area on the dipstick tube. Start getting this in position here. Should slide right down in there, nice and easy. Continue on with your two 10mm headed bolts. We're going to start both of them in before we tighten either. Let's get that bottom one in there. Move up to the next one here. Now while tightening these, start with the bottom and make your way up to the upper one. Double check, make sure that's properly secured in place. Now it's time for our next electrical connector. Let's go ahead and plug that into our starter. Should be able to just bring this right on over, line it up, press it in. Listen for a click from that, a light tug confirming it's properly secured. Continue on to your 2 mounting points. We're going to start down at the bottom one here. We'll slide that into position. And then make our way to the upper one. Let's get our bracket in place here. Get this in position. We have our 13mm headed mounting bolts. We'll just start them both in before we tighten either. Move this around as needed here. We can get our next mounting bolt in there. This one's a little bit more difficult to gain access to the mounting port. Now we have both of these bolts started in. Let's snug them up. Right there is bottomed out. Make sure that's nice and tight. Let's get the other one. Okay, that's bottomed out. Just make sure that's nice and snug. Now, as you remembered, during the removal process, we had 2 mounting bolts holding a bracket to this larger bracket. On our particular application, the bracket wasn't actually holding a wiring harness, but typically you just want to go ahead and take hold of that bracket with the wiring harness, align it, and start in those mounting bolts by hand and snug them up. That's what we're going to do. That one's started in. Let's get that next bolt in there. Just try to align this. Now that they're both started in, let's snug them up. Okay, that one's nice and tight. Let's get the other one now. Bottomed out, a little further, nice and tight as well. Now let's get ready to install our battery tray in this area. When installing this, we're really only focusing on the first 3 mounting bolts. There's one here, one in the same area heading towards the front, and then the forward corner. Start them in, snug them up. We have that mounted. Now we're focusing on the outer area here. We just want to go ahead and reattach our wiring harness on this area. Just go ahead and line it up, press it on. There we are. A little tug, making sure that's nice and secure. Now we do still have to install the bracket, which houses our PCM, or computer. For this, the main area that we're going to pay attention to first is all the way down along the bottom of our air filter housing. You have this small tab that protrudes down. That's going to fit into its rubber grommet, which is attached to the bracket we're installing now. So for this, let's go ahead and start getting it in position. We'll come in nice and low. We'll bring that rubber grommet up onto this area and then align all 4 of our mounting points. Get that rubber grommet on there. There we are. Let's start in our 4 mounting bolts. I'm going to start up along the front closest to me and make my way out and around. Once they're all started in, you can snug them up. This one over here. Let's just double check, make sure that's properly secured. Now it's time for the electrical connectors. As for the one that's solo, that's one of our black connectors. You really can't mix them up. What you're going to find is that the black-headed connector here is a little larger than the other one. The other one is for the bottom port over here. So let's start with the larger of the 2 black connectors and we'll insert it right along here. For this, we want to make sure that we have this locking tab pressed up as far as possible, and we'll start pressing this into position. Now as we're pressing that in, we also need to take hold of this and we're going to start rolling it down while pressing it in and lock it in. I've got an audible click from that. Now we're going to pull up on this lock right here. It should not come out of place. That's what we have this locking tab for. One last confirmation, we'll take hold of the entire thing and attempt to pull it out in a way. Now it's time for our next 3 connectors. This is going to be the orientation of them. Down along the bottom, we have our black connector that I just spoke of. Moving up towards the center, we have the rouge color. And then up along the top will be the gray. Let's start down at the bottom and make our way up. Okay, I'm pressing that in. We'll take hold of our locking tab, start pulling that down. Audible click. Double check that lock and a quick tug. Repeat the process up the line. Now we're going to focus on this wiring harness. We want to make sure we secure that in place as well. Straight down in this area, we have the area for our 10mm headed mounting bolts. Go ahead and start that in and snug it up. Now we can install our plastic tray. Looking along the bottom of that plastic tray, you're going to find that it has 3 alignment tabs. And if you were looking at the bottom of that metal tray, or I guess the top of the metal tray that we just installed, we can see those 3 ports for that to align with. Let's go ahead and start bringing that down into position. We want to make sure this is sitting flush. If it's not properly aligned, it's going to be off kilter and you might have an issue with that battery sitting in place. Now, while resting that down, it's time to install the battery. Before we do so, I just want to point out a couple areas. Now, what I want to show you is actually where our battery hold-down hooks are going to be located. On the inboard side, we have this small bracket. Go ahead and put the hook right inside that port. On the outboard side, we're going to want to come just down inside this area, and then you just want to go ahead and twist it until it's completely locked in. It's a lot easier to see when the battery's not in place. Now let's go ahead and get the battery in here, and we can continue on with installing that mounting bracket. Okay, there's one side. Let's get that hooked in there. Start my nut on there. Let's go ahead and start snugging these. Let's go ahead and take hold of that. Double check, make sure it's properly secured in place. Now it's time for the battery terminals. Typically for this, I like to go ahead and clean up the mounting areas. So I'm going to make my way right inside the center area here. I'm just using a small wire brush, attempting to remove as much of this corrosion as possible. After that, let's go ahead and do the same thing for the battery here. Let's get this battery terminal in place. We're starting with the positive, of course. Press it down onto the battery as far as possible. Tighten your 10mm nut just enough that it holds this in place. Go ahead and give that a wiggle. Protect the area. Moving along, it's time for the negative battery terminal. Once again, I'm cleaning the inside here. Just using my wire brush. That looks good. Let's clean the battery. Install that negative battery terminal. Tighten your 10mm headed mounting nut. Right there's bottomed out. Just a tiny bit further here. And a quick confirmation. Now it's time for our air inlet tube. We're sliding that into the air filter housing. Go ahead and bring it down along the front here. We're going to start aligning all 3 of our mounting bolt ports. We'll start them in, and then we can snug them up. Okay, friend, we finished our installation. The next thing we have to do is attempt to start up the vehicle several times, confirming the starter works as it should. After that, go ahead and close the hood, take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.